I grew up in eastern Ohio in the 1950s, a time when life was simpler and the world was a lot bigger, especially for a 14-year-old boy like me. My family owned a small farm, and during the summers, I spent most of my days helping my parents in the fields. We didn't have much, but we had what we needed, and I was content with that. The work was hard, but there was something satisfying about seeing the fruits of your labors, even if it was just rows of neatly trimmed corn crops. One particularly hot summer afternoon, I was out in the fields trimming the corn. The sun was beating down on me, and the only sounds were the rustling of the corn leaves in the breeze and the distant hum of a tractor. I had been working for hours and was starting to feel the weariness in my bones, but I kept going. My father always said that hard work builds character, and I was determined to make him proud. As a reward for my efforts, I had brought along my favorite candy bar, a Hershey's milk chocolate with almonds. It was a rare treat back then, something I only got on special occasions. I waited until I was sure I had earned it. Then I sat down on the edge of the field, the towering corn stalks swaying gently around me. I unwrapped the candy bar, the crinkle of the foil wrapper echoing in the stillness. That's when I heard it. A rustling sound that didn't quite match the wind. At first, I thought it was just my imagination, the result of too many hours spent under the relentless sun. But the sound persisted, growing louder, closer. I froze, my heart beginning to race as I scanned the rows of corn around me. The stalks were tall and thick, making it impossible to see anything beyond a few feet. But I could feel it. Something was out there, moving towards me. And then, out of the corner of my eye, I saw it. A shadowy figure emerging from the corn, moving slowly, cautiously. My breath caught in my throat as the figure stepped into the open, revealing itself. It was about my height, maybe a little taller, but what struck me the most was how it looked. Like a person, but not quite. Its skin was covered in a thick layer of coarse dark hair, and its eyes were wide and curious, almost like a child's. I realized with a start that this creature, whatever it was, couldn't be much older than me. I had heard stories of the Ohio Grassman, a creature that supposedly roamed the forests and fields of Ohio, but I had always dismissed them as just that, stories. Yet here it was, standing right in front of me, as real as anything else. I should have been terrified, but instead, I felt a strange sense of calm, as if I somehow knew that this creature meant me no harm. The Grassman took a step closer, its eyes fixed on the candy bar in my hand. I hesitated for a moment, then slowly extended the chocolate towards it. The creature tilted its head, its eyes narrowing in curiosity, before it reached out with a long, slender hand and gently took the candy from me. It brought the bar to its nose, sniffing it cautiously, then took a small bite. For a moment, the only sound was the soft crunch of almonds as the Grassman chewed, its eyes lighting up in what I could only describe as delight. We sat there in the field, sharing that candy bar in a strange, almost surreal silence. I found myself smiling at the creature's obvious enjoyment, and it returned the gesture with a shy, toothy grin. There was something almost childlike about it, a sense of innocence that put me at ease. For a brief moment, I forgot about the world beyond the cornfield, lost in this bizarre, otherworldly connection. But the moment didn't last. The distant rumble of a truck engine broke the spell, the sound growing louder as it approached the nearby road. The Grassman's ears twitched, its eyes widening in alarm. Before I could react, it let out a sharp, high-pitched scream, a sound that cut through the air like a knife. It was a sound of pure, unfiltered fear. In a flash, the creature turned and bolted back into the corn, its long limbs moving with a speed and grace that left me stunned. I watched as it disappeared into the rows of corn, the leaves rustling violently in its wake. The scream still echoed in my ears, and I felt a chill run down my spine. Whatever sense of calm I had felt was gone, replaced by a wave of fear that made my heart pound in my chest. I scrambled to my feet, my legs shaking as I sprinted back towards the farmhouse. The cornstalks seemed to close in around me, their rustling leaves whispering in my ears, urging me to run faster. I didn't look back. I didn't dare. All I could think about was getting as far away from that field as possible. By the time I burst through the door of the farmhouse, I was out of breath, my clothes soaked with sweat. My mother looked up from the kitchen table, her brow furrowed in concern. "What's the matter, honey?" she asked, her voice gentle, but laced with worry. I opened my mouth to speak, but no words came out. How could I possibly explain what had just happened? That I had just shared a candy bar with a creature that wasn't supposed to exist? That I had seen fear in its eyes, felt its panic as it fled from the sound of a passing truck? I shook my head, forcing a weak smile. "Nothing, Mom. Just tired, I guess." She gave me a long, searching look, but finally nodded, turning back to her work. I knew she didn't believe me, but I was too shaken to care. I needed time to process what had just happened, to make sense of the encounter that had turned my world upside down. That night, I lay in bed, staring up at the ceiling, replaying the events of the day over and over in my mind. I couldn't shake the image of the Grassman's face, the way its eyes had lit up with curiosity and delight. But more than that, I couldn't forget the sound of its scream, the pure terror that had driven it to flee. I never told anyone about what happened that day. It was something I kept to myself, a secret that I held close for fear of being laughed at or worse, dismissed as crazy. But I never forgot it. The fields never felt the same after that day. I would find myself glancing over my shoulder, half expecting to see that familiar shadow lurking in the corn. But the Grassman never returned. Over the years, I heard more stories about the Ohio Grassman, some eerily similar to my own experience, others far more sinister. But none of them matched the encounter I had that hot summer day in the cornfield. I like to think that the creature was just as curious and scared as I was, a kid just trying to make sense of a world that didn't quite make sense to him. Even now, decades later, I can't eat a Hershey's milk chocolate with almonds without thinking about that day, without wondering what might have happened if that truck hadn't come along. Would we have continued our strange, silent connection? Would the Grassman have stayed longer, maybe even come back? I'll never know. But one thing's for sure, I'll never forget the day I met the Ohio Grassman.
Pancake, too. Now I know we're...
That's outright bribery.
Yeah!